They looked like disasters, broken timelines, incoherent plots, missing scenes, dialogue that led nowhere. Directors walked away, studios panicked, and test audiences left in silence. These weren't just flawed films, they were cinematic train wrecks in slow motion, and yet, they didn't die. Because in the dark, windowless rooms of post-production, someone picked up the pieces. Not a star, not a director, an editor, armed with nothing but instinct, scissors, and silence. They rearranged chaos into clarity. They found tension in what looked dull, rhythm in what was broken, and emotion in footage no one believed in. They cut, stitched, and conjured impact where none existed. And when the films emerged from the other side, they weren't just fixed, they were transformed. Some became box office giants, others cult legends. All of them owe their lives to those who never stood in front of the camera. The editor didn't save the movie. The editor made the movie. These are 15 Hollywood action movies that were saved in the editing room. Fact Hekjane, Daken 2000. The first cut of Taken was a mess. Liam Neeson wasn't even supposed to be an action star. He was cast late. The original script had pacing issues, and early test screenings left audiences confused and bored. One executive reportedly called it a thriller without thrills. The raw footage had problems, too much downtime, disjointed tension, and fight scenes that felt robotic. There wasn't enough coverage to reshoot, and Neeson himself was skeptical of the film's future. But then the editors stepped in and cut like assassin. They trimmed over 15 minutes, restructured the pacing entirely, and used sharp, high-speed cuts to inject a visceral punch into every fight. One key choice: accelerating the tempo of the rescue montage scenes, turning an ordinary search into a heart-pounding manhunt. The now iconic line, "I will find you and I will kill you," was nearly buried in the middle of a longer conversation. It was isolated, elevated, and repeated in trailers. The film exploded, but it wasn't the camera that made Neeson a killer. It was the cut. Fact-2, Mad Max, Fury Road, 2015. It wasn't just filmed out of order, it was filmed out of its mind. Mad Max, Fury Road was shot without a traditional script, just storyboards. Chaos reigned on set, with endless sandstorms, production delays, and scenes that made no chronological sense. When filming wrapped, George Miller handed over 470 hours of footage. No narrative, just noise and beauty. Enter Margaret Sixel, Miller's wife and editor. She didn't just organize scenes, she invented structure. She wove a coherent arc from disconnected adrenaline. She layered shots to feel like music savage, pulsing rhythm. Most editors would have smoothed over the chaos. Sixel embraced it. She made it breathe. More than 2,700 individual cuts shaped the final film, an average of one every 2 seconds. The result? A kinetic masterpiece that critics called pure cinema. Fury Road didn't just win 6 Oscars. It proved that even a tornado of images can tell a story if cut by a storm whisperer. Fact-3, Bourne Identity, 2002. Bourne Identity nearly drowned. Halfway through production, director Doug Liman clashed with Universal. Budget overruns, multiple rewrites, and a lack of a proper ending turned the shoot into a nightmare. By the time principal photography ended, the studio had little faith the film would make sense. The original ending? Jason Bourne walks into a bank. That's it. The editors had to reshape the entire second half of the movie. They ditched subplots, rearranged sequences, and created a tighter psychological thread. But the real magic came later during a surprise re-edit after 9/11. Audiences no longer wanted flashy spy tricks. They wanted realism, grit. So the team sliced away anything slick or excessive. They recut the fight scenes with handheld tension, added sound design that felt brutal, reordered scenes to highlight Bourne's isolation. The final fight in the embassy wasn't supposed to be pivotal. After editing, it became iconic, and the franchise was born in the cutting room, not the script. Fact-4, Edge of Tomorrow, 2014. The first version of Edge of Tomorrow felt like deja vu, and not in a good way. The time loop concept was clever on paper, but early cuts of the film left test audiences confused, bored, and emotionally disconnected. Scenes dragged. The tone shifted wildly from slapstick to grimdark. The pacing felt like it looped too, endlessly. What's worse? The ending didn't work. Tom Cruise's character died, then lived, then died again. Nobody knew what it meant. Even the director, Doug Liman, called it a structural mess. In the editing room, the team made bold, surgical moves. They sliced through repetitive sequences, treating each loop not as redundancy but revelation. Jokes were tightened, deaths were trimmed. Crucial character beats, especially between Cruz and Emily Blunt, were reshuffled to build empathy early. But the smartest decision? Starting the movie after the battle begins, dropping the audience into chaos, then rewinding. That narrative sleight of hand gave the film a pulse it desperately needed. The new ending? Controversial, but clear. And suddenly, what looked like a doomed sci-fi gamble became a critical darling reborn through rhythm. Fact #5. Rogue One, a Star Wars story, 2016. The Force wasn't with it until post-production. Rogue One had ambition, a gritty war film set in the Star Wars universe. But the initial cut was so bleak, so disjointed, that Disney executives panicked. Character arcs didn't land, tones clashed. The third act? A gray muddle of digital rubble. Editor Jabez Olson and director Gareth Edwards teamed up with Michael Clayton director Tony Gilroy for what became a near-total narrative overhaul. They rewrote voiceover, restructured flashbacks, and most importantly, recut the film to center Jyn Erso's emotional journey. Entire scenes were reshot, but the edit made them work. The final act Scarif beach battle, Darth Vader hallway massacre, was shaped almost entirely in post. These weren't in the original plan. Rogue One became what it was because of the edit, not in spite of it. Fact #6. Die Hard 1988. It almost died before Christmas. Die Hard had a chaotic shoot, no finished script, and an action star nobody took seriously. Bruce Willis was known for comedy. Alan Rickman had never done film. The studio thought they were making a disaster. Worse, the tone was all over the place. The early rough cut confused audiences. Was this a thriller, a comedy, or both? The pacing lagged in the second act, and key character moments got buried. Editor Frank J. Urias took control. He amplified Rickman's performance by strategically repositioning his scenes. He kept the camera tight on Willis during quiet beats, making McClane vulnerable, not just macho. Most importantly, he fine-tuned the rhythm-balancing action with silence, one-liners with dread. The Nakatomi Plaza shootout? It was stitched together from half-finished coverage. But you'd never know. What emerged wasn't just a hit. It redefined the action genre. Fact #7. Suicide Squad, 2016. They handed it to a trailer company. Because the studio hated the actual movie, Suicide Squad was marketed like a punk rock fever dream. But what Warner Brothers got after filming was a dark, moody, uneven drama. No swagger, no chaos. Just Jared Leto muttering and scenes that felt stitched together by accident. Panicking, the studio turned to Trailer Park. Yes, the company that cut the film's teaser for help. They were asked to recut the entire movie to match the trailer's energy. Two versions were assembled, the director's cut and the trailer edit. Then test audiences voted. Guess which one won? The trailer edit was cobbled together with smash cuts, needle drops, neon titles, and stylized chaos. Plot holes widened, pacing frayed, but the film now had attitude, and attitude sold tickets. The result was a mess, but a watchable mess, and that's what saved it from disaster. Not story, not characters, rhythm. Fact #8. Salt, 2010. It started as a male-led thriller and almost ended in confusion. Salt was originally written for Tom Cruise. When he passed, Angelina Jolie stepped in, but the script wasn't rewritten enough. The first cut left test audiences baffled. Motivations were murky, twists fell flat, and the pacing dragged. The problem? Jolie's performance was tight and subtle, but the film didn't give her enough visual tension to match it. Action scenes lacked clarity. Character reversals weren't framed right. The emotional through line? Muddled. Editors took drastic steps. They removed entire side plots, shifted reveals earlier, and emphasized Jolie's gaze and silence, turning ambiguity into strength. The final escape sequence was tightened into a breathless sprint. More importantly, they cut a confusing alternate ending where Salt gets captured and interrogated. Instead, she vanishes like myth. What was once an identity crisis became a kinetic, elusive espionage film, one that worked because it kept you guessing. Fact #9. Iron Man, 2008. There was no script, just a star with sharp wit. Iron Man launched the MCU, but it was dangerously close to being a directionless improv reel. Jon Favreau encouraged actors to ad-lib, but that left editors with a mountain of inconsistencies, pacing issues, and scenes that ended in dead air. Key plot points weren't clear. Emotional arcs were soft. Jeff Bridges later admitted, "We were making it up as we went along." The editors had to engineer structure from chaos. They reassembled scenes to build a clear redemption arc. They cross-cut between Tony Stark in captivity and flashbacks to his past life, establishing contrast and urgency. Most crucially, they restructured Pepper Potts' role to ground Stark emotionally. The final confrontation with Obadiah Stane, it was originally limp and confusing. The edit added tension with tighter close-ups, rescored cues, and trimmed dialogue. What could have been Marvel's first misfire became its genesis. Fact Hassan Zero, World War Z, 2013. They scrapped the entire third act because it made no sense. World War Z was plagued from the start. Budget overruns, clashing egos, rewrites mid-shoot, and when the original ending was assembled set in Moscow, with Brad Pitt going full warlord, it didn't land at all. The problem wasn't the action, it was the logic. The emotional payoff didn't exist. Test audiences were baffled. Executives were horrified. Brad Pitt himself reportedly called it unsalvageable. So they did the unthinkable. They threw it out. The editing team, alongside screenwriter Damon Lindelof, restructured the entire back half. A new, quieter third act was conceived. Pitt sneaking through a WHO facility, whispering among the infected. Intimate, tense, and personal, cut together like a horror film, not a war movie. Most of that tone shift happened in post. The result? A fractured but thrilling narrative saved by contrast. Big noise, then chilling silence. And suddenly, a broken blockbuster found balance. Fact Hassanon, Mission Impossible, Fallout 2018. It was too perfect, and that's what made it boring. Fallout had killer stunts, globe-spanning action, and a proven lead. But early cuts of the film played like a demo reel, flashy but emotionally hollow. The flow between sequences felt mechanical. The audience watched, but didn't feel. Editor Eddie Hamilton made a bold call: slow it down. Instead of racing from one set piece to the next, he lingered on faces, on breath, on the silence, before impact. Action wasn't just choreographed, it was felt. He restructured the Paris chase to highlight tension, not speed. Extended pauses before fight scenes made violence land harder. Emotional arcs between Ethan Hunt and Ilsa Faust were pulled forward, giving weight to their choices. The film earned critical acclaim, not just for spectacle but for rhythm, because sometimes the best cut isn't the fastest one, it's the one that holds. Fact Hasson 2, 3002006. It was green screens and shouting until the edit made it legend. 300 was filmed almost entirely on a soundstage with minimal sets and overwhelming green screen. Actors yelled at tennis balls. Crew questioned if it would look like a video game cutscene. The studio feared it wouldn't translate at all. But in post-production, editors and VFX teams sculpted the impossible. They leaned into the unreality, enhancing colors, slowing motion, and choreographing blood splashes like abstract art. The speed ramp effect, slow into fast, into slow again, was born in the edit. It made each sword strike feel mythic. They also layered ambient sound to mimic echoes from ancient tombs. The raw footage was unremarkable. The final film, a stylized fever, dream of honor and death. The edit didn't just save 300. It created its identity. Fact Hasson 3. Speed, 1994. It had one fatal flaw. The bus scenes were boring. Yes, Speed had a killer concept, a bomb on a bus that explodes if it slows down. But the early cut was slow. Tension fizzled between action beats. Dialogues fell flat. Even Keanu Reeves felt too stoic. The studio considered reshoots. Instead, editor John Wright reshaped everything. He trimmed filler scenes and inserted reaction shots that didn't originally belong to the surrounding action. He recut camera angles to create movement where none existed. A key decision? Cutting between Jack and Annie more rapidly, crafting a relationship from glances and breath. Sound design was also rebuilt: engine rumbles, ticking clocks, heartbeat bass, layered to create pressure. Even scenes outside the bus were compressed to preserve momentum. The movie went from clunky to relentless. What saved it wasn't speed, it was precision. Fact 14. Tango Cash 1989. It was edited by K.O. Tango and Cash had 2 stars, 0 cohesion. Sylvester Stallone and Kurt Russell clashed on set. The director was fired before post-production. What was left was a macho mess, tonally inconsistent, bloated with B-movie cliches, and no clear villain arc. 3 editors worked simultaneously, under studio panic. They reshuffled scenes, recut jokes, and even removed subplots involving futuristic weapons. The final prison break sequence was stitched together from multiple takes with conflicting lighting made seamless through brutal editing. The plot still made little sense, but it moved. Fast, loud, stylish. It became a cult classic not because it was great, but because it was cut like it believed it was. Fact Hesson 5. The Matrix, 1999. The raw footage was confusing even to the cast. The Wachowskis had a radical vision, but what came out of the cameras was often dense, cryptic, and slow. The action was there, but intercut with long philosophical monologues and awkward pauses. Editor Zack Steinberg had to choreograph the footage like a symphony. He reordered exposition, moved training montages earlier, and most crucially, used cross-cutting to build parallel tension. Scenes like the Red Pill and Rooftop Rescue were transformed in meaning just by juxtaposition. Slow-motion shots were trimmed frame by frame. Even bullet time wasn't effective until the timing was perfect. The Matrix became a revolution in cinema, but first it was a puzzle, and only in the edit did it unlock. Bonus fact: Justice League 2017. It wasn't saved in the editing room, it was buried there. When Zack Snyder stepped away from Justice League due to a family tragedy, Warner Brothers handed the film to Joss Whedon with a mandate to lighten the tone and trim the runtime. What followed was one of the most infamous post-productions in modern cinema. Whedon reshot over 80 pages of script. He recut character arcs, added one-liners, and drastically altered the structure. The color palette was changed, the score was replaced, and in the process, whatever coherence Snyder had built was lost. The editors were tasked with welding two visions, dark and operatic versus bright and quippy, into a single experience. They couldn't. The theatrical cut was a Frankenstein monster of clashing tones, awkward transitions, and plot holes gaping like wounds. Scenes were rearranged with no rhythm. Character motivations disappeared. Even visual continuity broke down. Henry Cavill's CGI erased mustache became an online meme. The audience sensed it. It wasn't just disappointing, it felt wrong. Years later, Zack Snyder's Justice League was released, a 4-hour epic, not tighter, not lighter, but truer to its chaos. It proved one thing: sometimes, the edit doesn't save the movie, it kills it. Which one shocked you the most? Was it a film you thought was flawless, now revealed as a near failure? Or a chaotic project that earned its soul in silence, behind a locked editing suite? Tell us in the comments which transformation blew your mind, and what action film we should dig into next. Behind the Velvet Curtain.